Hey friends, welcome to a new episode, and today we're going to talk about the 5 worst Phil Collins songs. Now listen, none of these songs are bad. If you want to light up the comments, and that's fine, and I want to hear, everyone's got their own bad Phil Collins song, but bad is the wrong word, or worst is the wrong word to describe these, because listen, a bad Phil Collins song is still a great song, but I have to rank them. I really do. And of course, there's great Phil Collins songs. We'll get into that one day. There's amazing Phil Collins songs. And when you get close to the bottom, you have to put some at the bottom. And this is totally subjective. This is just me. Some of these songs I'm going to list, I got 5 of them. They just don't resonate with me. And I've got some reasons why I don't love these tunes. But you know what? I feel bad for you because some of these might be your favorite Phil Collins songs. One of these tunes may have been played at your wedding. And for that, I apologize. But whatever. This is we're not hurting anyone here. None of these songs, like I say, I'm ranking 5 worst songs, but I don't really skip any of these tunes. You know what I mean? Like, very rarely, except for maybe one of them, would I actually most of the time I'm listening on vinyl, so it's kind of arduous to skip a track anyway. So I rarely skip these tunes. Okay, we're gonna go from 5 from least worst to the worst, okay? And again, totally subjective. You could totally disagree. In fact, I'm always against the norm when it comes to Genesis and Phil Collins songs, and so you're gonna kill me. But here we go. Number 5. Starting with number 5, Through These Walls, from the album Hello, I Must Be Going. This song, I don't love this record, and I'm going to do an expose, not an expose, I'm going to do an essay on Hello, I Must Be Going one day and explain my disdain for this album, and I have some good, valid points, and I'll touch on them a little bit. I don't love Through These Walls. Okay, let me tell you, well, let's talk about what's good about it. First of all, the chorus is actually really good. The chorus has a really nice groove, a very Beatles-esque groove. The recording of the drum sound is awesome on the chorus, and the lyrics are clever. And although I will say the lyrics are what make this song a bit weird, and the single cover and the music video, and if you really think about the lyrics, it gets a little bit super strange, kind of a creepy tune. But at this time, it's Phil. Phil was being funny in a way. But I think this was the first single from his second record. And and I think in the book he talks about how it was probably a mistake, and he never thought that You Can't Hurry Love would take off the way it did. So this was a weird tune to start with. I think what my biggest issue with this and with this whole album is that there was drawing on way too much influence of In the Air Tonight on this record. And on this song, he literally, which could have been intentional, like as a kind of a calling back, but he literally used the In the Air Tonight fill a lot on this song. And that's just, I don't know, that just kind of always bothered me about how much they drew upon that Prophet pad and then those gated drums, which are great. In the Air Tonight is iconic, but a year later to do that again on the second record and on a follow-up single, it just seems like, Phil wasn't really reinventing anything. And maybe the label and maybe the producer, or, I think he produced this, but maybe him and Hugh just thought, stick with what was working. Maybe the label was pushing to do something dark and weird. And In the Air Tonight was certainly dark and sinister and weird, and it was hugely successful. So why not try that again? What's really cool about this story, though, is that he never does that. He never does it again. He never repeats himself, which I love. And if you look at after this record, he comes out with No Jacket Required, which is this club record, completely different from his first 2 albums. And that record was super successful. Won a Grammy, was more than 1 Grammy, I think, but certainly won Album of the Year. It was massive. But instead of repeating himself with No Jacket Required, he does But Seriously, which is serious lyrics and a completely different sound. And then after that record is incredibly successful, he changes it again and he does Both Sides, which is demos and self-produced and self-recorded and completely different from But Seriously, much more scaled down. That didn't do as well, but he changed it again, and he went and did something more Latin influenced with Dance of the Light. So I love that I feel like with Hello, I Must Be Going is the only time where he copied that record. And I mean, I'm going to do a complete episode on Hello, I Must Be Going and why I'm not a huge fan. It really is, it's almost verbatim like that album, to almost like an entire like B-side version of Face Value. Please light up the comments if you disagree. That's okay. Through These Walls, I don't love this tune. You know what I really don't like about it, and I've said some negative things, but I also am not crazy about the pre-chorus. It has this carnival sound. That is the part that really kills me, because the mood of it is okay. And if you want to copy In the Air Tonight, I'm not totally against that as an homage. And Genesis did a lot of homages. They would reference lyrics a lot from previous songs, or even reference melodies from songs that happened earlier in the album or earlier in their career. That's totally fine. It's that carnival sound in the pre-chorus I wasn't crazy about, because when the groove kicks in of the chorus, it's not bad. Okay, number 4 is The Roof is Leaking. I apologize to the Roof is Leaking fans. This is actually a skipper for me. And I talked about this in my episode on Face Value, and I love Face Value. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, it's a great album. One of my criticisms about Face Value, and I said it in this in the previous episode when I was talking about Face Value, is one of my criticisms is the eclectic sound, that it sounds like a mixtape, because it was Phil trying a bunch of different things. And in hindsight, the more research I've done, I realized that Phil was doing that on purpose, because that Face Value may have been his only solo release ever. And so he kind of wanted to pay tribute to all of the influences in his life. And so to do a country tune on banjo, and I think it was Daryl that played the banjo on this track, it makes sense. But for me, it really pulls me out of that moment, because I love, and I talked about this on that episode, I love In the Air Tonight and then This Must Be Love and Behind the Lines. It's just 3 absolute gorgeous, well-produced songs. And then we get into this song, and it just brings the record down, and the record picks back up again. But this, to me, I just would have left this song off. There was so many other tunes I think would have been better. The other thing about it that I'm not crazy about is it's kind of theatrical. Like, it's almost a bit of a Broadway tune in the sense that it's a story, and Phil doesn't do this very often. He doesn't often like tell a particular story that isn't about him. Or isn't a metaphor. And so this was just kind of him like playing a role. You know, it's a little bit like Oliver. It's not normal Phil, which is fine, because he was experimenting with things. What if this song had become a hit song? We would have had another record full of these country tunes. For me, that's why it's on this list. Okay, number 3, moving up the list of worst songs, getting worser. Badder? Worser. Worsest. Whatever. Wake Up Call from the album Testify. I know I have a lot of folks here who would agree. Wake Up Call is not a great tune. And it breaks my heart to say this, because I've heard Phil talk about this song in his book. I think he talked about this. He picked it to go on the Genesis archive. And so I feel bad, because he obviously thinks it's great. And who am I to argue? It's just my personal opinion. I don't love that he kicked off the album with it, to be honest. I think that Don't Get Me Started would have been a better opener. And I mean, Testify is getting a bit long, as most of the CDs in the 2000s were. They were always a bit bloated. I think that Dance into the Light was a bit bloated too. I think We Can't Dance was a bit bloated. I'm a big fan of trimming down records. So I think that, you know, if you had pulled this song, if you pulled other tunes, it would have helped Testify overall. Don't Get Me Started, I think, would have been a better opener. The instrumentation isn't very great. I mean, when it starts off, like, we're hearing these sounds that are just artificial. And I'm not opposed to drum machines. I'm not opposed to the electronic sounds of both sides. I absolutely love it. But here, I'm just not sure what's going on. Lyrics are kind of pedantic. They're not really that. I just don't love it. I'm sorry. I don't love it. Okay, number 2 is a tie. And I might upset some people here, but I have some good reasons. So originally I had picked this song. I had picked one song for this spot, and then I had a kind of like an honorable mention, and I decided to put them together because I think they're the same. So in slot number 2 for the worst Phil Collins songs, it breaks my heart even just to say that sentence. I'm sorry. Number 2 is Groovy Kind of Love, tied with Separate Lives. And I'll explain. So let's talk about Groovy Kind of Love first, because I know there's a lot of fans of Groovy Kind of Love, and there was a time when I liked it, and I probably would do it at a karaoke bar, if I had enough to drink. It fits the soundtrack, and I know Phil would probably agree here because he talks about this in the book, and that soundtrack was a mess because it was never meant to be Phil singing on that soundtrack. He had demoed these songs like Two Hearts and Groovy Kind of Love, which he didn't write, and he didn't write Separate Lives either, so full credit there. But this kind of like Brill, Tin Pan Alley song from the 60s, it's a fantastic song. It fits the 60s. And so here in the 80s, Phil is demoing this song that is to be used in a movie that takes place in the 60s. And he had somebody else in mind to sing it, which was probably cheaper to actually license an original track, although they used a Four Tops song. But or did they use a Four Tops song, or did Phil redo that one? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the Groovy Kind of Love, I mean, it's a good song. It is a good song, and it fits the movie. But this idea that somebody in the 80s would cover this song from the 60s meant for a film that takes place in the 60s that's released in the 80s, and then it goes to number one. It's just so bizarre to me that you had this song that was kind of done in a 60s type of way, and again, it was never meant for Phil to be singing on this tune, and it goes to number one in the US. And so my problem with this tune is it's cheesy. It's super locked into the 60s because of the title Groovy. I know that Tony Banks is with me on this one. Problem with this, and the same thing with Separate Lives, is that it's played so much on tour. Like it's on Serious Hits. The same with Separate Lives. On all of the tours, Separate Lives and Groovy Kind of Love are always there. I get it because they were number ones in the US. And Phil likes to play the songs that people grew up listening to. And so Separate Lives was number one. Easy Lover was number two. Groovy Kind of Love went to number one. And so there would be people who would see him in 2016. And if he didn't play Groovy Kind of Love, and they would have seen him in 2004, and they would have seen him in 90s with Serious Hits. If he didn't play Groovy Kind of Love, and they walked down the aisle to that song, and they would be disappointed. I get it. But to me, my biggest issue with these two songs is it's totally overplayed. We have this song played in the 2000s that was recorded in the 80s, and it was a song from the 60s, meant to sound like it's from the 60s for a movie. Anyway, I'm sorry if that's it. Separate Lives, that was my original number two. That's probably, obviously, it's my second least favorite song. Wait till you hear number one. But my second least favorite Phil Collins song is Separate Lives. Groovy Kind of Love, I just don't care. I mean, I don't consider it to be a Phil song. He covered it, whatever. Separate Lives, Phil made a little bit more popular. It's good. Lyrically, it's clever. It's clever. It's well-written song. Same with Groovy Kind of Love. Has that like Tin Pan Alley, Brill Building type of sound that people were writing clever songs. And the Groovy Kind of Love was a clever song, and Separate Lives is a clever tune lyrically. But it's not, to me, it's just not a Phil Collins song because it's not rhythmic. It's not even melodically interesting. You know what I mean? Although they do have a bit of a beat when they play it live. It's like almost spoken word, Separate Lives. You Have No Right, when you get to the chorus, it is a little bit more memorable, but it's just such a slow ballad. And I'm not down on ballads because a lot of the ballads have held up. I think of, One More Night, I think is held up. Tarzan stuff, You'll Be in My Heart, that's held up fine. I'm not against ballads, and there's other great 80s ballads that have held up, but Separate Lives for me, it went to number one at the time from the movie White Nights. I think it was in 85, 88, can't remember. 85 maybe, can't remember. Doesn't do it for me, and it's just overplayed. That's my biggest issue, is that it takes up a part in the set that another tune, a deep track, could be played, and so on the latest reunion tour that he did, and back in 2004, and on the farewell tour, the first farewell tour, and all of the tours, Separate Lives and Groovy Kind of Love have been played. My apologies to the fans of those songs. Okay, the number one worst Phil Collins song for me, just for me, okay? Because this is going to hurt some people too. But for me, number one is Wear My Hat. It's got to be a skipper to me. I mean, let me talk about what's good about Wear My Hat, okay? And it's funny. My kids like it. I get it. And honestly, live, it's silly live. I'm sure it's probably I've seen it played live. It's better live than it is on the album. I get that. I'm a fan of Dancing to the Light. So I don't want you to think that I don't like Dancing to the Light. I'm a fan of the Latin vibes. This was pushed a bit too far. This got into like cruise ship vibes. You know what I mean? This is like older people drunk on the Lido deck of a cruise ship. Just being kind of embarrassing to their kids. And so I'm not a huge fan of Wear My Hat. It's too fast too, you know? Like Phil, I will say this till I'm blue in the face. Mid-tempo is where Phil shined. Ballads, sorta. Fast songs, he didn't do many of them. But the mid-tempo tunes are the best. And this song just gets a bit too fast. The instrumentation is just super chaotic. And lyrically, fitting too many words into sentences. And again, I'm being critical. My goodness, this was a considered a hit, right? I mean, I don't know where it charted or if it charted or even if it was a single. I should have looked that up before making a whole YouTube video about it. But, I'm not sure where if it charted or not, but people love it. And I get that. And so if you love it, I'm sorry. I want to hear from you though. What is your least favorite Phil Collins song? What is your what is your bottom 5? Let's hear your bottom 5. Leave a comment. Let me know. Send me a message. Let me know what you disagree with. I bet you it's probably Groovy or Roof is Leaking or Through the Walls maybe, but that's mine. Number 5, Through the Walls, Roof is Leaking, Wake Up Call, a tie between Groovy Kind of Love and Separate Lives, and then my least favorite Phil Collins song is Wear My Hat. Thanks so much. I hope you let me know what you think.